I always wanted to be a writer. I mean, ever since I was a little kid, reading the R.L. Stine Goosebumps series, in fourth grade, I wrote my own sort of Goosebumps adjacent book called The Bridge, and it was really just teenagers getting killed on a bridge. That was as far as the idea went, but I wrote it, and wrote some of it. I mean, as much as a fourth grader can. Throughout high school, I wrote a little bit, and it wasn't until I was nearly done with my English degree at the University of Georgia that I even thought about writing for real. You know, I always thought that someone would come along and tap me on the shoulder and say, look, we want you to write a best-selling novel. And that's just not the way reality works. And when I finally decided to put pen to paper on my first books, I knew I wanted to write about the South. I grew up in the South. I still live in the South. And I felt like there was a gap there. There weren't that many books or series, I felt like, that really represented the modern South. There's most books or book series are about New York or LA, Chicago, some big city. And even my favorite series, the James Lee Burke, Dave Robichaux books, take place in New Orleans, which is kind of like, LA or New York, but with crawfish. And so I knew I wanted to write something about small town America, but make it feel gripping and suspenseful and all the things that you think about when you read a mystery series. And that's how I came up with the Rolson McKane series. I knew I wanted to write about a cop in the South who had problems and didn't always do the right thing, but tried. I mean, that's really what books are about, is people who are flawed trying to do the right thing. And there are issues of social justice I thought about with these books. I mean, before that was a term, growing up in the South, race is not an issue that anyone is surprised about. And so the first book, Boogie House, deals specifically and I think realistically with the way that race and racial matters occur in the Deep South. It's not pretty sometimes, and there's a lot of history there, but I try to deal fairly and make it interesting. Writing the Rolson McKane books, I feel like I've created my own little world in the South. I've created a metropolis out of almost nothing. There's where I grew up in middle Georgia, and there's almost nothing there. Small towns is the very definition of small town America. And so I feel like I've created something that I can be proud of and that I think reads really well. I love those books, and I think Rolson McKane he's the main character. I think he's as flawed as any protagonist who's ever been written. He has a lot of problems, and he doesn't always solve them. Nor is he necessarily the character who is the most heroic or brave in the series. He's a really complicated figure. And I think that, these are books for adults about adults, and they're gritty and they're dark, and there's some supernatural elements. As anyone who lives in the South knows about haunted houses, and so there's all of that. The South is everything. It has so many facets to it, and I don't know. I'm just really proud of these books, and so I just wanted to talk a little bit about my journey as a writer and hopefully connect with some of you. So I hope you've enjoyed this, because I enjoy talking about it.